All right. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. And we have a special success spotlight here for you today. It's officially been 2 years. So 24 guests counting today. And we have a really great episode, of course, lined up for you. So as we always do, if you have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A section. And we'll spend the next 30 to 45 minutes going through how, of course, we can help you with being successful in your hiring, really in this crucial time here at the beginning of the year as you really try to build momentum throughout 2026. So as you're used to, my name is Nolan Duda. I'm the Client Experience Manager for IdealTraits. And today, our guest is Chris Durling. So Chris is an Allstate agent, owner of Mountain View Insurance. It is our first guest that we're having out of the state of Utah. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that, which is exciting. But Chris grew scratch agencies from 0 to 2 million in just 8 months. Has 10 total staff members right now, 7 on the sales side, 3 on the service. Before, of course, opening his Allstate Insurance Agency, he spent a decade helping some of the largest insurance and lead generation organizations scale their businesses, and also is a part of and started the Ignite Growth Council, which is a hybrid coaching and advisory council that helps agency owners accelerate growth without having to sacrifice on quality of life. All right, so a lot of exciting stuff that we're going to get into here again over the next 30 to 45 minutes. But Chris, I know we're both battling a little bit of sickness, so I appreciate you for still making the time to join and for us to spend some time together and talk about how you've been able to bring on the 10 people you've got so far, man. Thanks again.
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, Nolan. And like you said, fighting off a little bit of that flu and still have pneumonia. So if
Yeah.
I sound a little off, just know that's why. But and I really do appreciate that intro. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. And yeah, we know that it's that time of year, folks, right? So if you're feeling a little bit under the weather, just know that so are we. So are most people. But, you know, we're still making do the best that we can. So Chris, of course, you know, with the intro, gave some details there, but I'm sure that there's some more things that you can talk through. So if you'd like, you know, talk through us that decade, you know, obviously helping those agencies and lead generation organizations to starting an agency to the Ignite Council. If you want to sort of go through that, and that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, like many, I didn't choose insurance, kind of fell into it. And, you know, a little over 10 years ago, I was working for a larger organization that really was focused on sales and marketing. And within that company, they had a small little insurance team that was struggling. And, you know, at the time, my boss said, "Hey, there's this opportunity over here in this insurance team. I think you'd be a great fit." So I interviewed, knew nothing about insurance, but that role was as a sales manager. So really started to learn the industry from the ground up. And it was a small agency of about 20 individuals selling non-standard auto nationally. And over the course of 4 years, I really learned what it took to scale an agency, because I did help take that small agency from 20ish people to a couple hundred
Wow.
sales agents, and launched a virtual team of 100 plus agents, and that was well before COVID, when it was the cool thing to do. And so really was able to learn the ins and outs of how do you find and attract talent, both for in office and virtually, and how do you manage them. And after I did that for several years, in addition to that, started a Medicare company for them, agency, and grew that to about 100 people. And then a larger company here in Utah, one that's pretty well known, Vivint, reached out to me, and they wanted to start an in-house agency. And so they hired me to go in there and from the ground up build an in-house agency to offer home and auto insurance to their 2 million customers. And so I spent 3 years building that out, dabbled in starting an MGA with Vivint as well. So when you talk about having to find talent early on, building something, that was my first real opportunity to do that with Vivint. Found a lot of success doing that. And they still operate that program today that I helped build there. And then, you know, as much as I enjoyed that time, EverQuote, you know, I think many people know EverQuote, came knocking on my door and asked if I would go and run, you know, a large internal agency that EverQuote had at the time. And so, you know, I did that for a few years, worked for EverQuote. What was great about that, it was taking all the knowledge that I had acquired over, you know, several years of working in the different agencies that I did, and then seeing really how the back end of a large lead vendor works and how do you scale within that. And then that's where I was introduced to Allstate. I was thinking to myself, I'm going to go start an Allstate agency. Was right about to do it. It was at the 1 yard line, about to sign the contract when a CEO in San Francisco got a hold of me and wanted me to build a brokerage, commercial brokerage for him. I told him no. He did a good job of convincing me yes. So I spent a year building out a commercial brokerage, national brokerage for him, and then finally got to the place where early last year I decided it's time to go and take 10 years of learning all of this on someone else's dime and do it for myself. And so jumped right in, opened my Allstate agency in April of 2025, and out of the gate we're doing great and ended the year #1 in Utah in every metric, and grew from nothing to 2 million, almost over 2,000 PIF in that 8-month period. And we're ready for 2026 and growing, and really excited to be using IdealTraits because we need the help.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, just, of course, I know that we've had our conversations as we sort of, led up to this point, but hearing you sort of go through all of that, I mean, it's apparent that you just have so much experience in building and scaling, right? Like, looking at your most recent experience with the Allstate agency, I mean, going from 0 to 2 million, it speaks for itself, but there's so many other things that are tied to that from before, right? Like getting called to build out an inside, EverQuote team, to building out a commercial brokerage, like so many different types of insurance, right? And types of different organizations that you're working with. And then now, of course, bringing that to Allstate. So I'm sure that, Allstate is happy to have you, and we're certainly happy that you're here with us. So to that point, we mentioned going from, 8 months ago in April, starting with 0 staff and now being at 10. How did you know that you needed to get to 10, and why did you go through that process?
Great question. So years and years of building P&Ls, right, and planning. And I knew getting into this agency, I needed to have a true plan for growth, which meant first and foremost having the numbers. And as I built out my modeling, I was able to back in to the number of individuals needed both on sales and service in order for me to accomplish what I had set out to do and still have set out to do. And so it really is just math on a sheet that you have to believe in. And with every number, you have to know, I confidently can do X to achieve Y. And in that, I knew out of the gate, to accomplish these lofty goals, exactly how many agents I needed, both in sales and service. And so as soon as I knew that number, then it became time for me to go and identify who those individuals were. Because as great as the plan is, if you don't have the right people to execute on the plan, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, of course, right? Our people are our lifeblood. That really makes the heart beat. And of course, with that, I'm sure it didn't just happen like in a week's time where you went from 0 to 10. So I'm sure that there was like a subtle ramp up for that. So for folks that are listening here that, maybe they have 4 staff today and their goal by the end of the year is to get to 12, right? Let's just say, throw out some random numbers. But for you to go from 0 to 10, did you bring on like 2 every couple months, or were you always looking for talent? I guess, like, how did that progress over the last 9 months?
Great question. I'm always looking for talent. So I truly believe that if you're going to run a successful agency or company, it doesn't matter, you should always be looking for the top talent, right? As much as you want your employees to always be with you and grow, you also know that if you are a good leader, that you're giving those individuals opportunity for growth, both inside of what you've built and
Sorry, so I think I might have muted you or something, maybe.
Am I back now?
Yep, now we got you back. Sorry.
So with what I was saying is you want to make sure that you're managing your people, and if they're growing and exiting, that you're always ready to bring on new talent to replace, right? And so for me, I started the recruiting process well before I opened my doors, months before I opened my doors. I started vetting individuals out, going through the interview process, and I've kept that going even now. And so I have continuous jobs that are posted, that I am constantly interviewing individuals to ensure that I can find talent to come in and help us continue to move forward. And that also allows me to feel okay if I have individuals that are currently with me that decide to move on, that it's not going to be the end of my agency, right? I never want to be in a position where that would be the case.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes total sense, right? I mean, we had Brian Scott, who's a farmer's insurance agent in Texas. I mean, he echoed hiring from a position of strength, right? To never be in a position to where you have to make accommodations for the people that you're looking to hire, right? So, I mean, that makes total sense, right? And to always be looking, I believe, is an incredibly smart, just to protect yourself, right? So that's great. Now, in terms of, again, going from 0 to 10, it's a feat in itself to just have 10 people within, an organization working there, because, of course, the popular thing to talk about today is that, hey, nobody wants to work, right? Or there isn't any good qualified employees out there. But obviously, for what you've shown over the last 9 months, right? Like your agency opened in April of 25. You haven't gotten 10 employees over the last 10 years. It's been 10 employees in 9 months, right? So what have you done when you're posting your job ads out there to make it an attractive offering? Is there anything unique that you offer at your agency that you believe makes it a unique opportunity for 10 people to want to join your operation over the last, 3/4 of a year?
Yeah. I believe that every agency owner has a unique offering, and that unique offering is themselves, right? And what they can bring. I believe that when I'm thinking about the jobs that I'm posting and what I want to say, I'm thinking about a few things. One, what is the role that I'm looking to hire? And let's just take, a sales LSP. I'm making it very, very clear that at our agency, we are investing in their success and what that looks like, both from financial perspective, but also from a coaching and growth perspective. And I outline that very clearly. So they have a very clear expectation of what they're getting into. But I also make very clear the expectation that we have for the type of individual that's going to be part of this team. And there's no misunderstanding of what that looks like. And I heard this years ago, and I truly believe it. Expectations are often not met because they were not properly set. Well, that job description is your first chance to really make a clear expectation and a two-way expectation. And so at our agency, I make it very clear that we are a high volume agency. And if you're someone out there that is doing well on low lead volume, I can help you double or triple that, which means that you can double or triple your income. But we're not going to just throw leads at you. We're going to take time to coach you. And so I outline, we have weekly one-on-ones, bi-weekly meetings with the team. We listen to calls. We walk you through sales skills and how do you close this and why didn't you close that? And so that's something that we really take to heart, is that development piece of everyone that comes in. And everyone that comes in, I tell them, my goal is for you to become an agency owner. So really where I am unique is I open up my back end to them, all of the numbers. I show them the P&L. I educate them on how does an agency actually operate, because I truly believe as they better understand the business model and they understand the numbers, they will think like an agency owner and they will operate almost like an agency owner. And no more am I trying to pull them along or try to push them along. They are coming along for the journey and they feel as they also have ownership. And that's something that I believe is unique to me. Is I don't know how many agency owners are sitting down with every new hire and going through an entire P&L, teaching them the backside of an agency.
And I would certainly say that is unique, right? In a good way. And it seems as if you're leading from the position of transparency just across the board from day one, right? Even from before day one, when you're creating the job description, I think that it is very clear, hopefully to everyone, but at least for me listening to what you're saying, is that you're doing it with a certain intention, right? And there is purpose behind the job description. You're not just putting words together and throwing it out there and hoping to land the perfect person. There is a certain amount of intention that is behind it.
Absolutely.
And that transparency also is a part of it too as well, and then in turn obviously becomes very attractive to the right person that's looking for that, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, just to piggyback off that, I do not hire quickly, meaning I will make sure that I take my time to find the right individual. Now, that sometimes means that based on the interview and things, we do move quickly, but I will take my time to fill the role. Uh, and I am just as quick to let someone go if I get it wrong, right? Which is something that I'm sure everyone has heard others say. So, but being intentional and not just hiring a body to fill a seat, but being intentional about the hire, to your point, is extremely important.
Yeah. And I think that oftentimes, to your point, it is very easier said than done, right? Because we are intentional about the hiring, but oftentimes we put ourselves in a vulnerable position to have to rush it for a lot of outstanding circumstances that maybe we can't control, right? Somebody retires or someone has a family emergency or whatever the case, or somebody just, I had an agent call me on Monday. They came back from work after being sick. They had an employee that was a 2-year employee that left a note on their desk and let them know that they were resigning because of a family emergency. No call, no conversation, just a note that they got back to on Monday that then led them down this path. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's I haven't heard that one yet. So that's good. But I think that, again, sorry to sort of circle in on this point, we want to be intentional about the hiring, because then we all can agree the firing is the hardest part. Like, no matter if someone is really bad at their job or not, it's still hard to fire someone. Like, I'm sure that everyone on this call could agree with that, right? So then it's all the more reason for us to be all the more intentional with that initial hiring part, and make sure that we give ourselves the time to not have to potentially be compromised to make a bad decision. Does that make sense, Chris? Hopefully.
That makes perfect sense. No, that makes perfect sense, because being intentional needs to happen throughout the entirety of your relationship with each employee, right? You're intentional in how you find them and in the expectations you set. You're intentional in how you coach them and manage them, and build them up as they are there with you. So that way, if the time comes where it is time to split, you as an agency owner can take less of an emotional approach and more of a scientific approach, knowing I was very clear about the expectations. You knew what to expect of us. You knew that you were going to get this type of coaching, this type of feedback. We were going to work with you in this type of time frame. And your expectation was that you would take that, implement it, and grow. And that hasn't happened. And it was also very clear that if those things were not going to happen, we would have to part ways. And so that intentional approach and that over communication of expectations from the very get-go does help in those moments where it's time to split.
Yeah. Perfect. Man, in the first 20 minutes, we got to some good stuff there. And we, of course, have a lot more to get to, Chris, but we do have some audience questions, and I want to make sure that we get to those too. So, Mike, it's good to see you. And thanks for the question. Chris, Mike has asked, what process are you using to write 1,000 items a month? Do you hire to that process?
Yeah. So I want to be very clear. We're not at 1,000 items a month. We're about 500 items a month. We will be pushing 1,000 items a month as we head towards the end of 2026. But we have a process, and a high level go through it. We do a lot of work in the lead vendor space. And so I have in my model it broken down to how many leads per LSP a day should I be purchasing. I know what my contact rate on those leads should be based on the systems that I have. I use a combination of Ricochet with Ring Central. I have many different lead partners, vendors, mailers, things like that. And so I have it down to a science on how many of these leads a day per LSP is going to get me to a contact rate of 30%. And then I know of those we contact, X number is going to be quoted. We're going to close X% of that. And we manage to our pipeline that is built within Ricochet, our tasks, right? We're on top of that. And then we have a sales process that we teach. And our sales process is based off of Griffin Hill methodology. And really, it is a consultative sales style is really what it is at the end of the day. But just like I've talked about being intentional with hiring, we're intentional in how we approach every conversation with every potential customer. And we're very structured in how we do that. And we hone in on the skills that are necessary to succeed in this type of industry. And we coach to that on a regular basis, right? So that's a high level process that we follow.
Perfect. And, Mike, hopefully that answers your question. If you have any other follow-ups off of that, feel free to funnel those into as well. Chris, the next question from George is, I want to scale, but cash flow is the issue. The funds are limited to pay staff. I think this is a great question because I'm sure there's, some folks that are on here too that are maybe facing that same issue as George. So I guess, do you have any advice for that in terms of, wanting to scale, but cash flow is hard to come by?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. Scaling, forget scaling for a second. I have nothing but respect for any small business owner out there because it is a burden to take on pay, lead costs, taxes. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. That's a financial burden that you as an agency owner carry alone. And so then you think to yourself, okay, but I want to grow. And so that's just another burden of where do I get that cash? And so what I say, and I say truthfully and candidly, is growth is not for the weak, period. You've got to have a high threshold of stress tolerance to look at growth and say, I'm willing to invest in it, because growth is an investment. And it's sometimes a hard pill to swallow for some. And I see it often where they want to grow, but they're too afraid to invest in the growth. And so the truth is I knew to get to where I'm at today, I had to invest a lot of my own personal funds into this business to get to where it's at today. I had to drain 401ks, I had to drain bank accounts, but I did that knowing that if I could execute on this plan, I would make it work. And so if you're looking to grow, the first thing I'd say is you have to be okay not being okay, right? And being someone who's willing to work through the stress and still, no matter how hard it gets, stay focused on that end goal. And what I see too often is someone says they want to be here, but then they start getting scared 2-3 steps in and they back off and they never fully commit to that investment. So it is an investment, whether that is you have the funds sitting in a bank and you're now willing to invest, or you have to look at a loan to invest, but do not invest without a plan. Don't just throw money into an investment not knowing how you're going to get your return. So at first and foremost, say, have your plan in place, know your numbers, know how you're going to get to that growth, and then back into how many heads does that mean? What are the systems you need to get there? How many leads do you need to purchase? And all that back into an actual number.
Man, and that, I mean, it's a really good answer because that, it's not just talking about how easy it is, it's acknowledging how difficult it is, right? Like it is hard to make that commitment, hard to take that leap, to take that risk. So I think that your acknowledgement of that, Chris, is really awesome and seated with some really good advice. So same thing for you, George, if that, hopefully that answers your question, but if you have anything else off of that, please fire it in and I'd be happy to get to it. And for the rest of you that are, listening and watching, feel free to fire in your questions too, because most likely if you have one, somebody else has the same question too. But Chris, sort of circling back to the assessments of it all, do you have any particular assessment results that you've been looking for? For the folks again listening, I did take a look at Chris's account. He's had a job ad up now for about 10 days and it's received about 25 applicants. So not necessarily in like a massive amount, but a solid amount to, of course, give some options to where at that point, then you're probably narrowing it down to specific assessments that you're looking for to potentially bring some more people on. So if you could talk a little bit more about, using the assessment as your part of your process, I think that'd be a good next step.
Yeah, I think the assessment is a powerful tool. I've used a dozen assessments in my career. And what I found with assessments is, although similar, each one is different on how they approach it. And so it really does take some time going into each assessment and learning about what is the assessment telling you. And what you'll begin to identify is there's certain parts of the assessment, and I'm just going to speak plainly, that will mean nothing to you. And you'll start to identify those ones, right? And so you just won't even pay attention. But then you'll start to narrow down certain parts of each assessment that you are correlating to the success of your LSPs that you've hired and already using this assessment. And you start to come up with certain aspects, characteristics, responses in the assessment that really help you identify for yourself and your agency someone who will be successful. And so admittedly, I'm still in that process with the assessment through IdealTraits, but a few things that I have found super helpful in the assessment, or just in the overall process, I'll say, is I really lean heavily into the one-way interviews. That one-way interview is something that I found to be super helpful. When watching them, I'm looking for how confident does someone speak? Are they stuttering over their words, or do they have clear thoughts? Right? Because in my mind, I'm thinking this is someone who has to speak on a phone all day, every day. And if they're not speaking clearly in an environment where they get to control it, I have a hard time believing that they're going to be able to speak clearly and intelligently in an environment where they're not in control all the time. Right. So I find a lot of value in that. So I'm not as much listening to the response as I am watching them and listening to how they carry themselves. And then in the assessment, I do start to tend to see that if the assessment comes out as this is someone who is a closer or someone who is consistent, those things matter in a big way to me. Right. Someone who can be consistent is someone that I know I can work with and that they will implement and the coaching that we're giving. And then of course, individuals who have that closer mentality is a big win as well.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I know that Carlos, you had came in with a question that says, hey, when hiring new team members, what are the particular traits that you're looking for? Sounds like closers and consistence are high on your list, Chris. But we do with every Success Spotlight episode, how do you feel about the persistent personality? Do you like persistence?
Yeah, persistence is key. An individual that I have found to be the most successful is someone who finds a way to win. Right? They might not be the strongest closer, but they are persistent and they will find a way to win. They will think outside the box. They will try something that their peers won't try, or they will say the things that the others are too afraid to say, right? Because they're willing to be persistent and try. So that's a big trait that I look for in someone is, are they willing to say the things that others are too afraid to say? Are they willing to try new things and find a way to win?
Really good stuff. So Carlos, again, hopefully, perfect timing with your question. Hopefully that answers it. If you've got anything off of that, please let us know. Or anybody else who has questions in regards to the assessment. But to Chris's point, there's probably some parts of the assessment that you're unfamiliar with. So I'm happy to announce that our assessment workshop, some of you may have attended that before, and we were doing that monthly for a time. We've transitioned it to be quarterly. So the next assessment workshop will be coming in February. Kelly from our marketing team will be sending out emails about that in the next couple of weeks. But make sure to look out for that, because I'll do a full training on the assessment, which will be really good for you to get more information out of that to just make more informed hiring decisions. But you had mentioned the video interview, Chris, which I think is great. There's communication that happens with the candidates in between that. Are you calling them? Are you texting them? Are you only emailing them? How does it work for you in terms of communicating with candidates?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of it, right? I think in sales, you're taught meet the consumer where they're at, right? And I think it goes the same way when you are looking for talent, is meet them where they're at. And so I will leverage all three forms of communication. Now, I am a firm believer that if I'm going to spend time trying to communicate, then they need to be quick in returning, my email or my call or my text, right? I don't expect that they're going to turn around and within 5 minutes do that. But I do leverage all three. If, push comes to shove, I'm a phone person. I would always prefer that I get someone on the phone and have a conversation with them. Again, because the type of role that I'm hiring this individual for is to be on the phones all day, every day. And so it's a quick way for me, just through the small little interactions leading up to a video interview, seeing how they handle themselves, hearing them, that's something that I like to do.
Yeah, I tell you what, Chris, that's shocking to hear that a guy who scaled an insurance agency in 9 months to 2 million is a big phone guy. That's a shocking. Yeah. No surprise there. All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So you've gone through the process. you've been communicating with the candidates, they've applied, they've completed the assessment, they completed the video interview. They've now gotten to the point where they've sort of started the regular interview process that you've had. As a lot of folks have heard me talk about, I mean, throughout the 23 guests that we've had at this point, we've heard about people taking candidates to dinner, doing certain role play scenarios, having them write certain like paragraphs about why they want to work here, right? All these different things that people have as a part of their interview process that really makes it theirs, right? So is there anything unique about your interview process, or do you find it being very standard, like one in-office interview with me and then one in-office interview with my team? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's anything unique, but there are certain aspects of the interview that we hit heavy on. I'm kind of the first line of interview, which might be unique to agencies out there where the agency owner is the first line. But we do 2 interviews, myself, and then the second interview is my sales manager. Seeing as my sales manager is the one that gets to manage that individual day in and day out, it's my sales manager's, final say on whether or not to bring someone in. So what I focus heavily on is this an individual that has the right traits and characteristics of someone that I believe can really help this agency continue to move in the right direction. Are they going to be someone that their peers are excited to see every day? Is it someone that their peers can learn from and grow together? And what I hit heavy on in addition to that is real salesmanship. Does this individual understand sales? And so I'll ask a lot of real hard sales questions, and then we'll go through an actual role play on the fly. I'll give them a scenario, and they have got to sell me based on whatever that scenario is and whatever that product is. So that way I can get a sense of, do they understand their own sales process? I can't tell you how many people will in this interview process tell me step by step what their sales process is, and then when we do the role play, not follow their process at all. And that's like really something that is a trouble for me. It's like a no immediately. Don't tell me a sales process and then not follow it. And so once they've passed me, then they go to my sales manager, and my sales manager will hit heavy on sales and culture. All right, so hit sales again, do something very similar, and going through sales questions, but then role plays, and then really culture. And culture for us is not, we have incentives and we have snacks in the office. Culture is what do you bring as an individual? Can you handle hard conversations? Can you hold yourself accountable? Can you be someone that has a voice, then vocally leading regardless of your title? And so he'll go through a bunch of those type of interview questions. And if after that we get together and we compare notes and we feel good, then we send an offer.
Excellent. Seems like a thorough process, right? But you got to do your due diligence, right? And
Right.
always a big advocate of having multiple people involved in the process just to gain a second opinion. Super
That's right.
important. All right. I can't believe I forgot to ask you this before, but in terms of like remote, in-office, licensed, unlicensed, I'm backing up a little bit. Sorry, folks. But do you have a preference there at all, or does it not matter?
Yeah, it does matter.
Okay.
It's changed. Excuse me. But it's changed slightly over the last several years.
Yeah.
So my headphones keep going in and out. Apologize, but I think I'm back. But over the first 6 years of my career, I was very hiring anyone who had a license. I would only focus on non-licensed individuals, and I still prefer that, to be honest. And the reason why is when you hire someone who is licensed, in my opinion, the vast majority of the time, they're coming with really bad behaviors. There are few agents out there that work in an environment like this one, pace, where there's a lot of accountability, there's a lot of coaching and expectation that you take and implement that coaching. And when I would hire in the past a licensed individual, they'd have an expectation that they get to come in and talk to 5 people a day, dial maybe 20 times, and then call it good. And that just isn't the case. So focusing on non-licensed individuals and focusing on the right attributes and talents allowed us to then coach them up and train them the way that we believe a high producing agent should perform. And we found a lot of success in that. Now, with that being said, there are times, and I'm in one of them now, where we have to grow quickly. And so now I'm hyper focused on finding a already licensed individual who has found success doing things the way that we operate, because we're not unique. I've met a lot of the mega agents within Allstate, and I can promise you what I'm doing is not unique. And I'm sure if you go to the top State Farm guys and farmers, they all are doing something similar to that, what I'm doing. So that means that there are individuals out there that understand how to be successful in this environment. It is just harder to find them. Why? Because all of us want that individual. But there are times, like I'm in right now, where it is better for my agency to find someone who already has those skills and understands what we're doing and take on some of maybe their imperfections, get them into the system, and really try to coach out of them those bad behaviors.
Yeah, it sounds as if it's very situational, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
You never really want to keep the door closed on anybody, right? But
Right.
in terms, as you had mentioned, the situation that you're in today, it would be better for you to find someone with the certain, of course, knowledge and skill set to really just be sort of a plug and play, if you will, right? To a certain
That's right.
extent. But with the reality that they're probably going to bring some bad habits, right? So
That's right.
I think that's a good expectation. That's awesome. All right. So now you've gone through the interview process, they've gone through you and your sales manager, and now they're hired. Talk to us a little bit about what that first week looks like. And you could be longer than this if you'd like. First week, I just throw out as an example.
Yeah.
Like, the first 30 days, right? Like, what does that look like? How is the training all done by you and the sales manager, or do you guys use any sort of third-party assistance for training? Always happy to, of course, give folks recommendations on that too.
Yeah. I'm fortunate over my career to have been heavily involved in building out large-scale training programs for some of the organizations that I ran. And so we've done that for our agency. We've built out a really robust training where for the first week, every new hire, whether it's an individual or an actual group that we've hired, they will work with just me. And so for a full week, we're going through systems, we're going through insurance 101, depending, again, if they don't have that knowledge. We're going through sales practices, sales methodology. And within that first week, we're also applying what we learn. I'm a firm believer that you can't just sit someone down and expect them to retain. You got to teach, and then you got to go do, and then you come back and teach, and you got to go do. And so as we're teaching, the do part for the first week is, and then we're shadowing real time with agents, and we're watching them go through the systems that we just learned. We're listening intently with quizzes and grading the agent that we are shadowing, so that way we can retain what we're learning. So we do that. And then in week 2, I hand the group off, or the individual off, to the sales manager, and the sales manager goes really deep into the sales process, real deep. And that's where the agent begins to take and make their first few phone calls. And it is a side by side. A manager is sitting side by side with the individual who's making the calls and taking the calls, and real time coaching them through the call. And repetition is key in the training process, right? So in that second week, it's a lot of hands-on training and revisiting what was taught in week 1. After week 2, they go into a 2-week ramp period where they'll spend the majority of the day on the phone, but then we'll pull them off and we'll go through, what did we learn today? Here's some notes that we had, and we'll do that for 2 weeks. And then after, that full 4-week program, they're 100% up to speed, dialing, taking calls, quoting, and closing.
Bingo. Do you have like a certain call requirement, like amount of calls or call time or conversations, or maybe let's say premium within their first month that you're tracking that?
Yes.
That you use as a standard? Okay. Yeah, perfect.
Yes, we do. Yeah. And I'm happy to share what we look at every day is 150 dials minimum, 3.5 hours of talk time,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't have a pipeline yet, right? It hasn't been built. Only way to build a pipeline is you got to dial, you got to talk to people, right? We do have a premium, a 3-month premium where for their month 1, their premium target is to get to 5,000. Just get to 5,000 in your first month. Second month, 15. By the third month, they need to be at the floor average minimum expectation of 35,000 in premium.
There you go. That's a good ramp up. Oh yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. And I mean, yeah, 3.5 hours. I mean, that's having those, the conversations will come with when you get to 3.5 hours, right? If you're going about it the right way. So, I know that folks will talk about the difference between conversations and total talk time. A lot of times those things can go hand in hand, right? But, what's important is that you're tracking it, not necessarily which one, right? So if you're more heavy on conversations, for those listening, great. If you're more heavy on the, certain amount of call time, that's great too, right? So I know that Corey's here listening. So just so you know, Chris, he expects his team to do 2.5 hours. So he's a little bit
Pick it up, Corey.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. But all right, fantastic. Well, Chris, I know that we've gone through so much great stuff, right? And no matter really which part of hiring that you're in, certainly we've talked about a lot of things that can be implemented into a process, because none of it is crazy, right? Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yeah. Generally my favorite part about doing these sessions. But as we end, really every Success Spotlight episode, we do ask, what's the one thing that you would recommend everyone has as a part of their process today, right? So out of all the stuff that we've talked about, or maybe something that we haven't talked about yet, something that is a non-negotiable for you as a part of your hiring process, what's one thing you recommend everyone do?
My non-negotiable is my involvement. Again, I'm not the final say, but at the end of the day, what we are building here together, I am ultimately responsible for. So I'm not suggesting that I'm involved in every final decision, but I'm there involved along the way so that I can be a sounding board for those that make the final decisions. I want to empower those that I work with. I want them to feel like they have ownership. And so I make sure that they make the decision. But I can only help be a sounding board if I know what's been going on. And that's difficult, right? Because oftentimes you hear there's work in your business and work on your business. But hiring the right people, for me, is in both worlds. That's working in your business and that's working on your business by hiring the right people. So I would say my one non-negotiable is, as an agency owner, be highly, highly involved with every individual that works for your agency.
Takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, takes a lot of resources, but it oftentimes is going to be the greatest return on investment. Right? So
the greatest return.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Well, Chris, thank you so much again, man. I appreciate it. Coming off of pneumonia too, man. I couldn't even imagine. I know we're both sort of, drinking our water, coughing as we go on mute and stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time to share everything with everyone. And for the folks of you that are listening, I appreciate you all for taking time out of the middle of your week to, join us and hopefully learn a thing or two, hopefully a bunch of stuff, but at least a thing or two that you can involve into your hiring as you, again, go through this really important stage in your year to where you went through the planning phase, most likely in November and December, and it's now time to execute. And a lot of the things that you'll be looking to execute on is, where do I need to be at with my team count? Where do I need to be at with terms of items per month? And a lot of times it'll be, again, reflected in the team that you have. So in addition to that, too, it is awesome. We've done this for 2 years consecutively now. We haven't missed a month, and we've been going strong for 24 consecutive sessions. So whether this is your first session, which is great, we're happy to have you, or maybe it's your 24th, right? I see Rob Barrich is here. I see him a lot. So he might be 24 for 24. But I see other folks here too. And it goes without saying, the way that Chris and I were able to get connected is because Jeff and Corey met Chris at Mega, an Allstate event that takes place in, I think it was in Nashville last year, Chris, that's how, right? Yeah.
Right. That's right.
So, for those of you that are traveling, whether you're an independent agent, farmer's agent, Allstate, American Family, whatever you may be, let us know where the events are at. We always like to see you guys face to face too as well, and have conversations like this that can turn into education that we can bring to the masses. All right. So again, I understand that this is an important time of year. We're here to help you execute. So if you need help or if you want some additional assistance, please reach out. Let us know. Either myself or my team is happy to help. And Chris, thank you again for taking time out of your day to share how you've been able to be successful in your tips, because it's sure to go a long way.
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here, and cannot express my gratitude enough for all that IdealTraits has done in helping the agency grow. So thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everybody. Have a great week. Stay healthy and stay warm, hopefully. And yeah, we'll see you on the other side. All right. We'll see you at either the next assessment workshop or the February success spotlight. But otherwise, have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks again, Chris. See you guys.
Bye.